Rennie, do you have a preamble?
I'm waiting for Alyssa to tell me that the live streaming is going.
Okay, you're all set.
Thanks, Alyssa. Welcome, everyone, to this evening's edition of the Special Housing Committee of the Kingston Common Council. The events here are being recorded and live streamed. We welcome everybody who wants to listen, but this is a meeting of the members of the committee and invited guests. So if anybody interrupts or is otherwise making noise in the meeting, we will have to cut the connection. I forgot all the other stuff. What else were we supposed to say?
These are tough times that we're all getting through, and we wish you good health and good luck.
That's very true, particularly here at the beginning of Hanukkah. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is short-term rental issues. So did either of you come up with a particular city's code that you thought had everything that we needed?
I looked at everything.
Already.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Phil?
Didn't we already talk about this the last meeting?
Nope.
We identified.
We were supposed to look at different cities' laws and see if there was one that we thought would, take care of everything that we wanted. And then, then we wouldn't have to do any work for, creating the package. We would, be able to adapt what somebody else has done. If, however, there's differences that we have, then we need to iron those out. So,
Why was Pat coming then? I'm not really sure. I didn't understand that I wasn't informed we were having a guest.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Don.
She said, we would like to give our input, Pat and Lester, because they had a lot of experience with Airbnbs and how what's the best way for her to give her input. I said, well, we're still having conversations about it. Maybe you'd like to join our committee and just call in and, give us share with us your thoughts. That's all. Very informal. Yeah. And so she was going to join us tonight and talk. But anyway, so I looked at the different cities that Rennie, you had collected, and I think Michelle had mentioned this, that Vacant seemed most relevant, and indeed it's really most relevant to us. And I would and I looked at the other ones, and some of the cities like Boston it feels like Boston, it's many pages and very, very heavy, but there's something to be taken from all of them. And it's great that we have the collected. It's not going to be that hard to put together a list of, things that feel right to us. And then we should, but then my question is, okay, let's say we take Beacon and then we add, 3 or 4 ideas from other municipalities.
Yeah.
That's when then it gets confusing. Then who is it to put together what we all recommend? Is this the 3 of us to say, okay, we agree that you need to live in the house if you're going to Airbnb it. You can't buy a property down the road and make it an Airbnb. Like, is it for us 3 to come up with our recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, that seems to me to be the appropriate way to go. And then, it should be one of us who does that work instead of all 3 of us trying to amend one body of laws here.
I think it would just be a good idea to just type something up and send it to laws and rules where it should be worked on as,
laws
committee.
And rules. Yeah, well, we would offer them something and say, here's the different options. But we usually don't draft law in committee meetings. We discuss something that's presented as a communication. So
it has the potential to do that, though.
We can ask Jeffrey if that's what he'd like to do. The other option would be to, well, never mind. I don't think that's a good idea because by sending it to laws and rules, you're just putting more cooks into the kitchen. And, they can pull things out and put things in, but I think it'd be better to present something that's fairly cohesive rather than saying, here's a bunch of different parts, now put it together. That's my opinion, at least.
My opinion is that, well, first of all, we didn't meet last month, right? So we're like really behind on this. So we just need to get something and get a hearing on.
Okay, well, go ahead, John.
I'm not feeling urgency. I think if we next month we have, a document that's a few pages long that the three of us work on and agree to, then, by February we present something to laws and rules. Is there urgency? Do you guys feel urgency?
Yes, the mayor identified in the beginning of the year that he wanted the council to be working on legislation for short-term housing. We haven't gotten it done.
Well, yeah, the homework that we had the last time was to look through all the laws and to choose the one that you thought was best. So, that's what we're doing tonight, trying to figure out which one we think is best. And then if there are elements of it that are that we don't like, then we need to be sure about that so that we can, at the very least, offer people in the Common Council a choice if there are parts of the law that we don't particularly, that we don't agree on, for example, or if there's something that we think needs to be taken out or added in. I don't think that's a huge amount of work because, we've already been over the specific range of issues and, choices within those. So it's just a question, I think, of one of us taking if we agree that the Beacon law is the one to start with, then we go from there. And I think we can easily come up with something. I think, I think February would be a good time to introduce it because we would like to have something in place before the summer, because I think that's when, Airbnb or short-term rentals pick up, and it would be good to have something in place so that we can, people can start that work with a clear idea of what's involved legally.
Rennie, have you found out from the county how many Airbnbs are registered to Kingston that the county is collecting tax on?
I don't have that specific number, no.
Okay, you were going to ask them that. So
I thought the number was 300 based on Dennis Doyle's original presentation.
Yeah, so I just looked at the Airbnb website today and I put in our zip code and there's over 300 properties registered with Airbnb in the city of Kingston. Mm-hmm. So it could be upwards of even more. So.
Oh, there's Airbnb calling.
I don't think so. There's some people who are very concerned about the warranty of my car. They're very kind.
I think there's a lot of people in the city of Kingston that are concerned with our housing right now. And it's really important that we preserve our housing stock. And so I just feel like we're just dithering away here in this committee. So.
Well, Michelle, then, introduce something, put something out there.
Yeah, I will be very happy to. I will submit it as a communication by Monday.
What are you talking about? Short-term rental regulations?
Yes, that's the topic we're on, isn't it?
I don't understand. You seem very upset.
Because we come here to this meeting and we accomplish nothing. And there's a lot of
something, but you're complaining instead of working on the issue. So if we would look at this law, we could go through it and see what's there and see if that's the one that we like.
Yeah, we all have. You've sent us lists of various cities. I've added to it. We've all looked through it.
So let's look through the one with Beacon and see if that's got all the parts that we want, unless you want to create something from nothing.
we've already identified that we would do this. I just feel like, and last month's meeting got canceled. So I just feel like we just are always falling further and further behind on getting anything done.
We're trying to do something right here. So can we look at this Beacon one?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
You have it up?
You know, I feel like you guys are just, you don't even tell me that we have a guest coming, right? We have homework, right? We're going to be looking at stuff, and then we're also getting
You're really bothered by this. You wanted to withdraw from this committee, then, you know, I'm really, this is not fun. You know, please have a positive attitude so we can get some stuff done and enjoy it. You know, you're really, you know, your anger is coming through the computer. And
well, it's not anger, it's real frustration.
Well, look, you know,
I
I have another job. Maybe you don't, you know, and I know I absolutely know how busy, crazy you are. So I'm saying that tongue in cheek. You know, we all have extremely busy lives. We're trying our damn best to make things happen here. There's only so much that we can do. You know, Rennie's right. This is what we had said we would do this month. We would choose a city that seemed close, and then we would write, you know, from after this, we would cobble together a list of ordinances, whatever, that makes sense for us. But, you know, this is not our full-time job, and we just can't get things done like you want to. I spent my life getting things done. You know, that's what I do, is owning companies. But
we're in office to get things done, especially, you know, the mayor asked that we get this done prior, because we have a housing crisis in our city, and it doesn't. And now we have COVID, and
I don't want to continue this meeting. This is a drag. I don't want to fight with you, and that's that's totally not what I'm here for.
Well, let's, you know, I understand Michelle's frustration. We'd like to have something on the table, right?
Well, we don't. So, you know, we're taking the step to get there.
Right.
But,
yeah.
So,
I don't want to sit here and like.
Can we look at the Beacon legislation here and see what we think about it?
Is that the most efficient use of our time? What we said we were going to do was choose a city that's most relevant. After reviewing them, I looked at them all just a couple of days ago. Mm-hmm. So I see that that Beacon has the most relevant framework, but we do need to pull something from New Paltz, something from Woodstock. Rhinebeck had some interesting points.
Yeah.
So one of us has to volunteer to cobble together on one document, you know, a list of 10 things.
I'm happy to
spend the time now to do that as a group.
I'm happy to do the cobbling, but I think, you know, I think Beacon's is a good one. I liked the Rhinebeck one. It seemed to me to be a little bit clearer, partly because they have a very nice kind of illustrated one, or illustrated version of it that, you know, breaks it down into it makes it very simple. What it is. What's that?
Infographic.
Yeah. But I'm happy to look at the Beacon one because it does seem to be more comprehensive, if you will.
What is on, Randy, what else is on our agenda for tonight?
We were going to talk about the Pattern for Progress report because that has, you know, there's a bunch of things in there that I think are really important to discuss. And some of that is, you know, items that the mayor could initiate, but at the very least, we might want to, you know, voice our support or not for different parts of that. But I think it'd behoove us to discuss it some.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. We have identified 200 zombie houses that should have families living in them, and they don't. So, you know, the mayor talked about putting together a task force to try to turn those houses into, you know, homes for people. Right now, they're just empty.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
so the land bank is not taking those homes, right? So that's the issue here.
Well,
No,
let's put that that was going to be the second thing on the agenda. I thought about doing that for about 20 minutes at the end, in the latter part of the meeting.
Okay.
But if you two want to talk about that first, we can.
No, Randy, why don't you continue to run this meeting?
Okay. So if we're looking at the Beacon version, unfortunately, I can't share my screen. But I think we're all agreed that there needs to be a permit, right?
Well,
Yes.
there's two issues there. There's a permit and then there is a inspection.
Right. And I think both of those are necessary, aren't they?
Yes, but but it's not necessary that you have fees for both of them. I think that, and that's a whole topic of fees generated by the city and what can we realistically, what's reasonable for the city to charge for. Because my understanding is that Airbnbs pay 2% tax to the county, just like hotels. And so Airbnbs should be paying that. Apparently, many of them are not. According to March Gallagher, at least 25% don't even pay that. And I guess there's a lack of enforcement on that. At any rate, the fact that there is a tax in place to the county, I don't think that the city can place an additional tax on it. Seems that would be exorbitant to me, to owners of these, but to have a fee of, that's in line with our other inspection fees and registration fees does make sense. So there might be a one-time registration fee for $150 or something. I don't know. And then an inspection, we charge them for an inspection. I don't know, what the rate there is. Maybe it's 100 or 125.
But, the Rhinebeck one, they charge $100 per hour with a minimum of 1 hour.
Okay. So I think that those two fees represent significant revenue to the city without being aggressive and out of line. So I like that. But you guys may think that we should try to put an additional tax on it.
Well, it wouldn't be a tax. It would be a fee.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Not necessarily a tax, but a fee to operate.
Yeah, I think the fee can be, the fees that I saw tended to be in the $100, $150 range.
Yeah, but I think Michelle's referring to a fee beyond the inspection and registration.
Yeah,
Yeah,
registration fee.
What?
So does our building capacity have the capacity to do these inspections?
Well,
that's the other thing is to figure out, what the hours would be and what kind of manpower, person power that would require. And that would also help us figure out a little bit more about the fees. So, I can talk with Steve Knox about that and see what
I just did some quick math, and if we had the registration fee and the inspection fee, registration and inspection, like you're just talking about, if it's annual, that it comes out to around $60,000 of revenue. So, or maybe 70, but yeah, closer to 70. So you can say that this could offset the price of an additional inspector. Because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of visits.
Okay. So we're agreed then, it seems like that a permit's required and an inspection is required, and there should be a fee for both of those. So a registration permit in essence, right? We're clear on that? The permit means registration?
Yes.
Not two separate things? Okay. Let's see. So then the next thing, short-term rentals shall be permitted in all zoning districts subject to the requirements set forth in this section. So do we agree with that idea that these should be in all sections of the city?
Yeah, but I question about zoned commercial, like a C2. Do we want? I don't. I mean, that wouldn't follow our zoning, right? You can't have residential people, you can't have people living in commercial buildings. On the other hand, Uptown used to not allow residential living at all, and that was changed a few years ago.
That's right.
Yeah, and we're about to update our zoning so that we have uniform zoning code. So it means uniform that everything is pretty consistent throughout the city. So
That's optimistic.
Well, I think it is something to be clear on. And I mean, it seems pretty sure that we're going that direction. How soon we get there is another question, of course. But so it sounds like then, oops, I've got too many screens working here. So is there a commercial district in the city where there's no residential units allowed at all?
I don't know the answer to that.
well, you have the zoning map.
I can get it, but I'm loath to open up another screen here because I'm already confused as it is.
All right, I'll open it.
Interesting. Woodstock allows non-owner occupied, but they charge a lot more money for it. From $50 to $250.
Yeah, that's usually the other kind of big question. Do you require owner occupied or not?
I'm in favor of owner occupied because of nuisance issues. So we have zoning, just to go back for a second, C1, C2, C3 is commercial, so you need to look at the zoning code and see if they restrict in those areas.
Okay, I can do that. But then that would become moot if and when we adopt a new zoning code that's form-based, right?
Right, and that was the point also of some of these areas are the overlay districts.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Don, what's your feeling about the owner-occupied part?
I think that I'm for that provision because it's just bad if we have homes that only have rentals in it, and what's the word, transients. So I'm for the notion of restricting well, Michelle is, in favor of owner occupied.
Okay. There is the issue of, we know of at least one Airbnb, or I'm sorry, short-term rental building that's not owner occupied. So I personally would be in favor of grandfathering in if there are more than that right now, but not allowing any in the future. What do you all think of that?
It's interesting. I mean, we would need to know how many there are, I guess. But so on my street here on Fair Street, one of my neighbors across the street owns a separate building that is Airbnb. And I don't love it because you want neighbors and you want people that are committed to being here. And it just feels like, that house is sort of lost to our housing. We need more housing. So I don't think so. I think I'm against grandfathering.
Yeah, I mean, well, the other part there would be, you know, if it's in an area that's currently historical or something like that, you know, where an area that's heavily touristed, then it's not, you know, it's not in a neighborhood, because I totally agree with you about neighborhoods. But I don't know how that would.
You're saying if it maybe it's on Broadway, for instance, that could be an exception because it's less of a neighborhood. I mean, the people that live there, of course, will argue that. They'll say, this is my neighborhood. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that even the commercial districts are neighborhoods unto themselves. And that the more transients, the more it hurts both the neighborhood and it hurts our housing inventory.
Okay.
But that's my opinion. Michelle, do you have an opinion on that?
I'm not in favor of grandfathering in, just because it seems that we have a lot of housing stock that's already gone to Airbnb already, that's just lost. So it's hard to do. It's hard to make that decision. I just think that's something we can put in now. And then when we go and have, you know, a public hearing about it and hear from the public and hear from these businesses, we can make that decision.
Okay. Good. All right. So then they've got various aspects of the permit application. Do we want to go through each of those?
I think that again depends just on our city hall capacity or building department capacity. And
well, we can leave those as is. That's getting, I think, a crucial thing. The other thing then has to do with, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of this. Notarized form. We agree with that? Yes.
Where are you? You're on Beacon. What page?
Page 3 of Beacon. This is section E.
Right. You have to prove that they live there.
What's that?
You have to prove that they live there.
Yes.
I don't know about notarized. I think if we just get their driver's license or an official document that verifies their address.
Okay. Inspection. We agreed that permits and inspections need to be annual. Yes.
Yes.
yeah,
Okay. Owner occupancy. We already did that one. Here, short-term rental property shall not be rented for any commercial purpose or any other purpose not expressly permitted under this section, such as concerts or weddings. I think we're good on that one. Okay. Preemptive evidence, create a rebuttal presumption that a property is being utilized as a short-term rental.
What page, paragraph?
That's just clarifying. Then they give the various grounds for revoking a permit. I think those are all pretty sound. They have an appeals process. That we would probably have to run by corporation counsel because we don't have a city administrator per se. And, you know, appointing a hearing officer. Again, that's another thing that would, I think, be a question for corporation counsel to take under advisement, as well as there would be an issue of whether that would add any kind of significant cost in the process. Their violations for offense 2 are $500 per offense. I saw some higher amounts. Any ideas on that one?
What page are you on, Rennie?
This is M, paragraph M. which is page 6.
Thanks. That's too expensive, I think. $250.
$250. Okay, Michelle, your opinion?
I don't know, it's a starting point. It could go either way.
All right. So we're at section 2 now, and here they're defining dwelling, home occupation, distinction with a hotel, clarifying what owner occupied means. Any
That's all relevant.
All right, so we're good with that section there.
Yeah.
Move on to section 3, ratification, readoption, confirmation. Those are just clarifying when it'll become operative.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, these are just legalese.
Okay, let me just look real quick at the
So I think there was just one thing that was missing out of there that I would think would be important, that the state was even looking at, was having the owner carry insurance of at least $250,000.
yes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about earlier. Good. Thanks for bringing us back to that. Right. Yeah. For some reason, this one does not have that. I know that there was another one that had insurance clause, so I can bring that over.
Okay. So if we have time, we can look at the other ones and see what we want to add. Or we can take time to talk about the other topic.
Well, I was just the one from Rhinebeck. Let me see here. There's the issue of whether somebody could put their whole house up for Airbnb. It would have to be their primary residence. So, for example, if they were going out of town for 2 weeks, could they put their whole house up? My sense is we're talking more about having just a single room in a house, not a whole house. Do you all have an opinion on that one?
I'm sorry, say it again.
If someone's going on vacay for 2 months, they're going to Florida, do we let them rent their whole house while they're away?
I think that gets into pretty spongy territory because they're not registered. They're not.
No, they'd have to
They're not
register.
we don't even know what that person, if they have, even correct home insurance.
Yeah,
It seems like a lot of hoops for them to have to jump through.
I think that we do allow it, but require them to jump through those hoops.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be waived. That they would have to be part of it.
Yeah, at least they need to be inspected. They need to be registered, and they need to show proof of insurance.
Good. So it'd still have to be their primary residence. And we would, I know I saw some that have specific limits too, on what the amount of time that would be allowed.
Yeah, I like those.
What what limits? What do they limit? Long-term rental, 30 days?
No. Well, I mean, out of the year, it would say like, a total of 6 weeks out of the entire year, or something like that. I don't remember the exact dates, but you couldn't get around the whole house issue here.
Yeah. I'd say 8 weeks would be fair. 2 months.
Not consecutive, then it's not a short-term rental.
Right. Okay.
Well, why not? What do you mean? Not 2 consecutive 8-week periods? What do you mean by consecutive?
Well, then it's no, anything over 30 days is a rent, like a regular rental. It's not a short-term rental.
But if it falls in the, if we say, maximum 60 days per year, 2 months, if someone is going, if an older couple is going to Florida for 2 months for January and February, I think they should be allowed to rent their house while they're away.
Okay, then it's got to be a really short limit.
Right. Well, a lot of these, though, limited short-term rentals to 30 days, because otherwise, they're saying that would be defined as long-term rental. So that would mean, that would put a max on any particular rental, even for a full house.
I see. So could we make it possible to allow 2 consecutive 30-day rentals with a special permit?
The problem there is you start getting into those areas of who's going to police that.
Well, and nobody can police that.
I think it's the simpler, the better.
I know, but take that situation I just presented. Someone wants to go. I say older people, but really anybody who's like, we want to go away for the winter or the summer, and we need the money to pay whatever the mortgage. Do we really want to say no? You can't do that, or allow them away?
I think we're just then going back into nuisance territory, because then the owner is not there, right? There's no controls in place.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, and I think that because the other problem is, how would you be able to tell how would you be able to tell if you were the neighbor? How would you know whether this was actually a string of several rentals or one rental that was, for that full time?
You wouldn't know.
And then the other problem you get into there is the question of having somebody on the premises or a manager who's in the neighborhood,
But to require that?
If you had a really long STR rental period,
yeah,
then you start to get into those issues of, who's going to be responsible. Suppose you allowed a 2-month rental and the people who move in are, making too much garbage. They're using the other neighbors' garbage cans and recycling bins. They're making too much noise. There's no manager around to take care of that if it's somebody who's gone away for 2 full months. That's a problem of having that long period of rental. So, we can also leave that as something to be discussed, say.
Yeah, and maybe we allow, if we allow 2, maybe as long as there's a month or 2 between the rentals, so they can rent in June and they can rent in January.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that would work out. Just say that there's none over 30 days, and they certainly can't be consecutive.
Well, I think then they also have to have some sort of property manager or someone that's responsible.
Yeah, designated responsible party.
Okay. All right, good. Let me run over here real quick again. So yeah, in Rhinebeck, they require a special permit if it's unhosted at a person's domicile.
And the permit would require them to name someone who's in charge.
I think so. All right. Oops, wrong button. Yeah, I think this covers all the specifics here. Yeah, just they give some details of what's involved in the permitting and some other things that are. I think the Beacon one didn't have this. Rhinebeck has two prohibited actions, and those are use of an RV vehicle or other mobile structure, and the other one is sleeping outdoors, renting outdoor space. Would we want to have that in there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Increasingly, that's the thing to do. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. So anything else then?
From Rhinebeck?
Well, no, from anywhere. Why don't we do this? I'll work this up with the Beacon, as the sub, as the model. I'll add these different elements and then send it to you all within a week. And then you can look. And if there are a couple places where we thought there might be differences of opinion, we can leave those in, and then we can submit this as a communication for January. That sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just write a note here to myself. We're talking by December 18, 17, 18. All right. Good. Now, so the other thing that I thought would be important for us to discuss is the pattern for progress. There we go. I thought this was just a real wealth of information, really valuable stuff to have. So just for that purpose alone, and it was interesting to me, at least, to see that these vacant properties are roughly distributed across the entire city, with a bit of a concentration in Midtown, but lots of different ones all over.
Randy, who sent the document? I mean, how do I pull it up?
Go to the city website and it's on the front page.
Okay. That's easy.
There's a press release from the mayor on May 5th or 6th. Have you seen it yet, Don?
Yep. I did.
So there are 8 recommendations. Let's just go through and do a straw poll real fast if we could. Is everybody, and then we can come back to any where we've got significant questions or issues. Does that sound all right? So recommendation 1, is everyone in favor of that? Create a task force?
I still haven't found it, but
well, I can read it out to you. Recommendation 1 is create a vacant property task force to proactively prevent foreclosure, promote investment, and repurpose vacant properties and secure resources.
absolutely.
Isn't that what our community block department does? I don't.
That's the idea is that the housing initiatives would be responsible for creating that task force, because it would include various people in city government, but also stakeholders. So like realtors, housing advocates, renter advocates, and so forth. But the idea there is to proactively work to prevent foreclosure. I thought that was an important element there. So I'm sorry, Michelle, did you say you were up or down on that one? This is just a straw vote. We can come back to them if you want to discuss further.
I honestly don't understand why we need a task force to prevent foreclosures and vacant properties. We do that already in our community block office and Office of Economic Development.
Well, then that would be a thing to check on to see whether it actually gets done there. Maybe you may be right.
They've had a grant, the LISC grant, and that was the purpose of their grant.
But that's not going to be an annual grant to us, right?
No, but it's been part of the community block office. So it's the work that they do. So I can't predict whether or not they're going to have a grant, but how is the Department of Housing being funded? Grant.
My idea here was to just run through all 8 of these. You want to discuss this so we can do that. Recommendation 2, this is understand, evaluate, and streamline the transfer of vacant properties with a formal in-rem process that serves the goals of the City of Kingston and the Kingston City Land Bank. Everybody good with that, or you want to discuss further?
I mean, that sounds like redundant with the first one. Task force would do that.
No, this is talking about foreclosing on homes sooner in the city.
Oh, yeah. I didn't get that. If it's about foreclosing sooner, of course.
Well, it's not exactly about closing sooner. It's about making the process work better, precisely so that you can prevent foreclosures. But it sounds like we need to discuss that one also. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's opaque.
Number 3 is offer the City Council options for incentivizing the reuse of vacant properties for first-time homebuyers. Are we good with that idea? In other words, it's saying that the land bank is not sufficient to move all the properties that the city forecloses on.
So it's saying that the properties that we've been holding on to that the land bank was going to take, the land bank is not going to be taking them, and we need to disperse with them then. Dispense.
What do you think?
Yes.
That's not my understanding. That's not my understanding of what these houses are at all. Michelle, my understanding with anything that the land bank can take, like the city owns them, the city is foreclosed on them, I don't see why the land bank can't take those. They have the capacity. I think that these are houses that are being held up by banks, by management companies, that for whatever reason, maybe they were foreclosed upon by the bank. They're in REM. There's each situation is unique, but it's not like the city has control over them. The idea is to find out what's going on with each building and seeing if there's any way we can take control over it and give it to the land bank.
Okay, so it sounds like
we've conveyed over 2 years ago a list of like 36 properties that the Kingston Land Bank does not want. So we are holding those to that list.
We clearly want to discuss number 3 some more. What about recommendation 4? This is enhance and support strategic code enforcement with the addition of staff for the Department of Building Safety and Zoning Enforcement.
Yes.
Not the way it's written. It doesn't include the Common Council, or it says establish a quarterly communication with representatives from the Department of Building, Safety and Zoning Enforcement, Kingston Fire Department, the Mayor's Office, the Kingston Police Department, and the Director of Housing Initiatives, and completely cuts the council out.
Okay, so we want to discuss that one some more. Number 5, create strong anti-blight mechanisms to reduce the negative impacts of vacant properties. We all agree with that one, or do you want to discuss it further?
Can you repeat it, Rennie? I'm sorry.
Create strong anti-blight mechanisms to reduce the negative impacts of vacant properties.
We do that already. The office.
Well, we'll discuss because I don't think we do. All right, so number 6, encourage
we have a LIFT grant that we've been doing
accessory dwelling units.
That does what?
Number 6 says encourage the creation of accessory dwelling units. This is where they're saying in redeveloping or renovating these vacant properties, that offers the opportunity to create accessory dwelling units. Currently, it's hard to build those according to our city code. So it's talking about making it easier to do that and then using these particular properties to increase the number of units. So for example, right now, there's about 200, and you could add probably another 50 accessory dwelling units with them. That's what that's about.
So these would be exemptions to our code?
Or changing the code.
Yeah, you need a special permit.
Yeah.
I think I think that's fine because it'll add units to our inventory. Yeah. We need to bend the rules to do that.
Okay. Michelle, how about you? Is that a good one, or you want to discuss it further?
I think it's just something that would come under when we do the form-based code. So.
Okay. Recommendation 7, take actions to move forward with the citywide zoning update and implement a new zoning code that incorporates form-based zoning aspects.
Exclamation point.
Yes, Michelle?
Well, yes.
Okay. And then number 8 is to proactively prevent foreclosure and financial hardship for homeowners.
Well, but that seemed to be covered in another point where you're helping to prevent foreclosures. That's how we do it. We help people try to figure it out.
Yes. Well, I mean, clearly there's some more detail there, but so it looks like we definitely want to talk about several of these issues. So we're at the end of our hour.
So can I just say something? I just would be really curious if do we know that if this housing study is in compliance with the RFP that was put out for it? And are we identifying housing needs going into the future for the city of Kingston? Are we addressing housing needs for the homeless? Are we addressing housing needs for our aging population as we look for, toward building in our future? I just think that a lot of this that was reported on is just cut and pasted information. So I don't think it identifies real issues that we have with our housing here in the city of Kingston.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can check the RFP if you want, but my understanding from the beginning was that it was a survey of houses that were vacant or seemed to be otherwise unoccupied. And so I think what you're asking for, talking about there, is a different study that would look at different populations and their particular housing needs. So clearly, this could help some of those people, but like I said, that was not the goal of the study. The goal of the study was to look at vacant houses, vacant properties, vacant housing properties.
Yep. Zombies.
Yeah, but what you're talking about, Michelle, that might be a good, I know that there have been studies done in the past, but the problem is you can even see in this one, some of the data that they have, they already were wrestling with entering into the COVID crisis. And so some of the data at the, when they're getting toward the present in their survey, it's clear that they had to, kind of back off a little bit because some of the numbers were difficult to read in that situation.
Well, it's just a situation where we can't do anything with bank-owned properties, unless we can't. There's nothing we can do unless we buy them from the bank. So that's sort of moot. Even though we've identified them, we can't do anything with them.
Well, they're not necessarily all bank-owned, as they point out in the
Right, we own a lot of them. The city of Kingston owns a lot of them.
Yes, definitely we own some of them, but they identified over 200 and we've got, I think, 30 to 40. And not all the properties that we have are housing. Some of them are empty lots, for example. So, but I think what you're talking about is a study that would be really valuable to have. And, that might be the sort of thing to look at to see, like I said, I know that we've got studies along those lines, but they're about 10 years old now. So the question is whether or not they still are valid. And particularly, they're not going to speak to our current situation. So, I hesitate to call for a study, but that might be what we want to do. We might want to meet with the mayor, talk with the mayor about seeing if we can get a study that would look more specifically at the needs of these particular populations that we know are going to be hardest hit in the coming weeks and months as the rent moratorium is lifted.
I wouldn't support that idea of doing a study. I think that it's obvious that we need housing at all levels. For recently homeless, for low income, for middle income, and for market rate.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like we all know that.
Well, I think that we need to move these properties that the city owns as soon as possible because the properties are falling apart.
So we should really look at.
Were over 5 years old at the time they were conveyed by resolution to the land bank in 2018. There's one in my ward that's just rotting away.
Yeah, it's frustrating. There's one down the street from me too. So which one is that? 39. That would be resolution number 3. Oh, that's incentivizing reuse vacant properties. Yeah, 39. Yeah, so one thing to consider there would be whether we have the power to take some of those properties and dispose of them in another fashion other than through the land bank.
Of course we do. We're the council. We can do that.
Well, at this point, the process is to move those properties to the land bank. So we would have to get the mayor's approval So that would require discussion with the mayor.
It says in here that my understanding is that the land bank does not want those properties. That's why they've only taken 3 of them. The
That's not
original.
my understanding. I think my understanding is that they are not. There's lots of reasons, administrative and dysfunctional reasons, why they haven't taken control of them, but not that they don't want them. You know, a conversation with Daniel would, who's the head of, of this, would answer some questions. I don't understand why it's taking so long, but he's intimately aware of all the issues.
Yeah, he came here a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
He spoke to us.
So one thing is they're talking about conduct a thorough review of the 5/50 law as it relates to properties in the city of Kingston. And that if we see that that's appropriate, then we should adopt that law.
I'm not in favor of that law.
Why not?
Because it's taking properties that have been sat on for how many years because the land bank didn't take them, and we then have to dispose of them and sell them, and then we donate the tax money proceeds, 50% of the city generated municipal tax, to the land bank for 5 years.
I don't know enough about it.
Well, that's why I think we need to have an actual review of the law.
It comes under the laws on formation of land banks at the city, at the state level.
Well, we had the other options of how we sold properties in the past. And so we've done auction before, we've done sale through the common council deciding, and I believe there was one other method that we used. Oh, we tried to incentivize realtors to sell city properties, but that did not work out well, as I remember. So, I think, and for my money, the best option besides the land bank is through an auction house.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, though, that the houses are still going to low to moderate income families. I don't want them to be going to, lead to more. I want them to go to local families. I'd like to see them stay within our community, not have someone coming up, from the city and buying them up.
Yeah, I imagine that there are ways that we can require, credentials of people who would be what do you call it?
I think the intent of who these homes should have gone to should, still apply.
Yeah, but I think that you can lay that as a prerequisite in an auction.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one thing to explore.
And there's also the Kingston Land Trust.
And how does that fit in?
Well, my understanding is they were supposed to be part of the land bank to begin with, so that they could even possibly own the land under the homes, so that it lowers the tax on the property tax. So when a low to moderate income homeowner owns it, they aren't getting then behind in the property taxes, and that property tax doesn't become an issue for them.
Okay. Well, what we need, I think, is we clearly need more information about a number of these things. So what do y'all want to do? Because it seems like, certainly in terms of moving the properties that the city owns if the land bank is, because the other problem, the land bank may want them, but it seems like the land bank is moving very slowly. And I don't think we can afford to allow these properties to sit there, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The whole point of the land bank, from my perspective, when we set it up, was that it was going to take these properties quickly and put them back on the market quickly. And we would also get back the entire tax debt on each of those properties. So,
Yeah, because right now these properties that the city owns aren't generating taxes. So it's causing everyone else's taxes to go up. There's no tax going to the school district.
Isn't that Michael Gilliard's job? He was brought on to make it happen. His first job was to take over the land bank and absorb the properties and turn them around.
Yes, that's how it was presented to us, but that doesn't seem to be what's happening. We now have a whole department, and the land bank hasn't moved a house. It hasn't housed a family. It's hiring staff. So, it's just taking a very long time. Sorry, dog.
right. So, clearly then, one thing we're talking about here is potentially investigating another approach, going back to perhaps auctioning off some of these properties to get some of them sold. So does one of you want to take on talking with the mayor or investigating further another way of selling these properties, another way of, getting them off the city's books? Great. Thank you, Michelle. All right. Well, we're way beyond our time today. Partly we got started late, so we're at a little over an hour. We got something very substantive done with the short-term rental regulations. We got some discussion done here of the various parts of the vacant housing study. I think clearly, though, we need some more discussion here. Michelle has offered to talk over other ways, other means of selling the properties that the city has, or getting them off of our books, right? So anything else then for tonight? Because then I think what we'll do is next time we meet, there'll be 2 things on the agenda. One will be to discuss the various elements of the vacant housing proposals here. And the other will be to look closely at potential actions relating to housing for the at-risk populations as we're moving further into the secular, the fallout from the COVID crisis. Does that sound good to you two, or is there something else you'd like to
say? Either the federal government or the state is going to, extend the eviction moratorium as we move into the second wave.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they will, but
has the governor indicated that?
Yes, he's spoken about it.
But as we've seen, there have been a number of incidences lately where there have been fires or other issues with buildings, and landlords have used those as excuses to move their tenants out. So, there's clearly stuff that's going on, and we want to be clear what powers does the city have, and which ones do we want to try to enact as some kind of legislation or intervention, and then be clear like what powers does the state have, so that when folks are asking us where's the help, we can be clear on telling them where to go.
Can you give me an example
of what?
A situation where a fire, are you saying which is it an apartment building, or what do you mean by that?
Green Street, yeah, on Green Street, there was an issue with that building, so they turned off the electricity. There's actually some argument about whether or not the landlord actually turned everybody out and is trying to sell the building, but used that as cover in order to empty the building of people.
He started the fire?
What's that?
Think he started the fire?
I don't think he started the fire, but I think that I'm just saying that's the discussion that I've heard. And there's been like 4 incidents recently in low income multi-unit buildings, one on Elizabeth Street, another one on Green Street, one on Wall Street. It could just be coincidence, and I think most of them are, but it's the question is, you also have seen there's been a number of sales of these larger buildings that have been for low-income folks.
Those are boarding houses. A lot of those that you're referring to are boarding houses, and those people don't have leases, so they aren't covered by real property law. They're placed there by DSS. So now DSS has to find them new housing.
Right. So the question is, that's another question then. If we don't have any power to intervene there, we have to be clear about that when people come to us and say, why don't you do something?
Right. No, we can't do anything about that. The property Chiz's place, we can't do anything about that.
But we can direct people who've got questions, who are concerned and so forth. So that would be good information for the other members of the
residents or the public.
Both, and for members of the Common Council, so that when, somebody comes and says, why don't you fix this? The Common Council, other members are very clear on what powers we have, which ones we don't, and where to direct people with their concerns. So it's a question of how we help people and also how we communicate with people about the different levels of government and where the powers are for the different possibilities. Right?
Yeah, no, I'm clear on that. I'm surprised you all aren't, having been in office so long already. The rest of you, I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to go. I'm going to wish you a happy Hanukkah and be well. Good night.
Good night. All right. Thank you, Lisa. That's the end of the meeting.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
We'll do our part.
This conference is no longer being recorded.